Most of the creepy legends are fiction, but some urban legends, chilling, can often turn out to be true. A dog boy in the town of Quitman, Arkansas. There was a legend about a dog boy for a long time. The locals claimed that it was about an evil and very cruel little boy who loved to torture without animal protection, and then completely switched to his parents. After the death of the boy, his ghost lived in the house, where he dealt with his parents in the form of a half-man, half-dog, inspiring terror and fear of people. People often notice his outline in the room where he kept his animals, which he mocked. Witnesses describe him as a large furry creature resembling a dog, with glowing cat's eyes. Those who pass by his house notice that he is closely watching them from the window of the house, and some even claim that an incomprehensible creature was running along the street after them. Reality. Once upon a time, in an old house at 65 Mulberry Street, there lived an evil, cruel boy named Gerald. His favorite pastime was catching neighborhood animals. He had a separate room where he brought the unfortunate. Over time, his cruelty began to manifest itself in relation to his elderly parents. He was huge and overweight. They say that it was he who dealt with his father, but no one has been able to prove that he provoked his fall from the stairs. After his father's death, he continued to abuse his mother, keeping her locked up and starving her. Law enforcement agencies intervened, and they managed to save the unfortunate woman. He was sent to prison, where he died. The Killer in the Attic. This chilling story appeared many years ago. It tells about a family unaware that a dangerous uninvited guest has settled in their house, secretly living in their attic. They lose or move things, suspicious objects appear in the trash. They make cute jokes about the brownie until a cruel killer living next to them kills them in their sleep. The scariest thing about this legend is that, it would seem, it is quite possible, and this is actually so. Reality. This story began in March of 1922. The owner Andreas Gruber began to notice that things were periodically missing in their house, they were not in their places, and his family heard footsteps in the house at night. And Andreas himself noticed someone else's footprints in the snow on the eve of the tragedy, but after examining the house and territory, he found no one. At the end of March, the person who left these traces came down from the attic and brutally dealt with 6 inhabitants of the farm. The owner, his wife, their daughter and her 2 children, and their maid with a hoe. Their bodies were discovered only 4 days later, and it turned out that at that time someone was caring for livestock. The identity of the perpetrator has not yet been established. Blackwater. This rather famous story begins with an ordinary family buying a new house. Everything is fine with them until they open the faucet, from where black, cloudy, foul-smelling water pours. After checking the water tank, they discover a rotting body. It is not known when this legend was born, but a similar story really took place. Reality. Eliza Lambila's body was found in a water tank at the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles. Her death is still a mystery, and the killer has not been found. By the time the guests started complaining about the spoiled water, and her body was discovered, it had been decomposing in the tank for a week. The Nanny and the Killer on the Second Floor. The story of the nanny and the killer hiding upstairs is undoubtedly a classic of urban horror stories. According to this legend, a girl working as a nanny in a rich family receives a creepy call. In almost all versions, the caller asks the babysitter if she has checked the children. The nanny calls the police, where it turns out that they are calling from the house where she is with the children. According to most versions, all 3 are found brutally murdered. The real reason for this terrible story was the very real murder of a 12-year-old girl, Janet, who was looking after 3-year-old Gregory. In March, 1950th year, when this brutal crime occurred, there was a terrible thunderstorm in Colombia. Janet had just put the child to bed when an unknown person entered the house and brutally dealt with the girl. The main suspects for a long time were a certain Robert Mueller, who was also accused of another murder. Unfortunately, the evidence against Mueller was only circumstantial, but he was still accused of the girl's death. After some time, the charges were dropped, and he left the city forever. After his departure, such crimes stopped. The Hook legend of the Hook is perhaps the most common of all urban horror stories. It has several versions, each scarier than the previous one. The most famous tells about a couple who were sitting in a parked car. The radio broadcast was suddenly interrupted to tell the listeners the terrible news: a cruel killer wielding a hook has escaped, and now he is hiding in the park where the lovers are. The girl, having heard the news, asks her beloved to leave there as soon as possible. Guys, it's annoying. But they are going, and he takes her home. When they arrive, they find a bloody hook hanging from the door handle on the passenger side. Reality. In the late 1940s, a small peaceful town was shaken by a series of horrific murders. The culprit was dubbed the Killer in the Moonlight, but was never found. At night he killed young people in parked cars. Frightened residents were returning home long before the curfew announced by the authorities. The bloody crimes stopped as quickly as they began, and the Moon Killer disappeared into the night. Kids living in Pittsburgh love to tell the story of Faceless Charlie, also known as the Green Man. It is believed that Charlie was a worker at the company, disfigured as a result of a terrible accident. Some claim that acid is to blame, and some, power lines. Some versions of the story claim that because of this incident, his skin turned green, but all versions are united by the fact that Charlie's face was so disfigured that it lost all features. According to legend, he wanders in the dark through depressing places, such as, for example, an old abandoned railway tunnel, also known as the Tunnel of the Green Man. For many years, curious teenagers have visited this tunnel in search of traces of Faceless Charlie. Many claimed that they felt a slight electrical voltage and experienced problems when starting the car after calling Faceless Charlie. Others said they saw a slight glow of his green skin in the tunnel. Reality. Unfortunately, the lion's share of truth lies in this tragic story. The legend of Faceless Charlie appeared due to the fact that he had a very real prototype, Raymond Robinson. In 1919, Robinson, who was 8 years old at the time, was playing with a friend at a bridge over which high-voltage tram tracks passed. Raymond suffered horrific injuries after accidentally touching a power line. As a result of the blow, he lost his nose, both eyes, and an arm, but got out. He spent the rest of his long life of 74 years locked up in himself, and went out for a walk only at night. However, he reciprocated the friendly treatment of people to him.